want you to remember a time in your life where you felt pain. You stubbed your toe, and the pain was overwhelming. And you were holding on to that pain at first. You feel it so intensely in your foot, the state of change between not being in pain to suddenly being in pain. It's this enormous shift, and you can't help but put all of your attention on the pain. The entirety of this process now becomes pain. And in order for you to feel less pain in your toe, you had to let go of that feeling. You had to stop and say, all right, I'm not going to feel this so intensely anymore. I'm just going to tone it down. I'm going to back off my consciousness from being completely about this pain. I'm going to let it go and back off and refocus on the rest of my life and everything else that's going on around me, so that the pain diminishes in the process. This is the same thing you're going through when you're having major life changes. This is the card that I pulled today. Just now, before I started this show, is death. That's what this show is about. Death and its reversal, which is, not a grand, massive change necessarily, but something internal. An internal change. It can still be massive, but it's an internal one, primarily. And we feel this when we're going through changes in our life. We realize whenever we come against these boundaries of changing from one state to another in our lives, where we're going from one period of our lives into the next one, we're transitioning into who we're going to be, but have not yet become, and we are stuck with these old aspects of ourselves that don't know how to do anything but hold on to what it was that we had in the past. And that person who's holding on to the things from our past can't envision a different future, and that's why they're holding on so tightly. And the less vision of the future that old person has, the more they're going to hang on, and the more they're going to drag on into the new life that we have to live, because these changes are beyond our control. We don't have control over the force majeure in the contract of life. Force majeure is the acts of God, major forces acting on our lives. It's a part of the legal contract that says that, hey, if this thing happens, this thing then happens. Because of that, if this thing that is out of our control occurs, we can't control that. Sometimes it's very often stated in a legal contract that there are things beyond our own power that we cannot be held responsible for. And that's a statement in a legal contract, but it's also applicable to our lives. There are these things that we are affected by in life. As they occur, they are states of change that come over us, but they're brought on by external factors sometimes, most of the time. And these things are beyond our control. And we so often forget how out of control we are. And we think that we have some responsibility in this state of change that is overcoming our lives. That we try to evaluate our responsibility in what has happened. And sometimes it's not applicable. It's just stuff that is happening to us, and we now have to adapt to new circumstance. And It's okay to do these evaluations. They're necessary, but you can't begin to hold on to that identity because that's a state of loss. When you're evaluating the why and the how and the who and all of that stuff, you're in that state of loss and pain. And when that pain is brand new, and the beginning of the change of the circumstance precipitates the change in emotional state, where you then become sad. You go through these difficult emotions. Angry, you go through various stages. And you can become depressed, you become melancholic, whatever it is that happens. As you're going through your emotional shift and understanding, your consciousness shifts into the understanding of how this change is going to affect your life. And that pain dawns on you as you lose access to the hope and possibilities of a circumstance that you thought would occur, given the circumstance that you had. The old life had a potentiality, whether that was simply to continue and endure in a kind of chronic sort of pain or illness or unrest, difficulty, challenge, because those old states sometimes are not ideal for us. They are an equilibrium that we fell into. We've just found it easy to stay in this circumstance sometimes. It's easy to stay in a bad marriage. It's easy to stay in a bad job. It's easy to keep living in the patterns that you have become accustomed to because you're accustomed to them. And now you're just kind of stuck living your life in this way that isn't necessarily working out in your best interest. It is not bringing you joy to your heart. It is not allowing you to express your authenticity. You are being harmed and contained in some way by this pattern of your life. And so along comes change. And it's inevitable. It's just a universally recognized law. And it's obvious to any child if they give it 2 minutes of thought. That change is the only constant in the universe. It's the only apparent constant. It will happen. It will occur, whether you're having a grand time or a bad one, or you're just stuck. Whatever is happening to you right now will change. It's going to change. And this is an ultimate lesson, another ultimate lesson of the zodiac, of astrology, that we can derive from the study of it if we want to. But one hard, fast lesson of the zodiac is that things are always going to change. Not just always going to change, but they are in the process of changing as we speak. No matter what the state of being is at the moment, we are always in a state of change. And it is minute, moving at every moment. Something in the system is in a state of change, flux, and momentum moving forward, like mechanisms on a clock. And we see this process in the zodiac. The little bits and pieces move around and around. The ascendant moves backwards through the zodiac. Every 2 hours, the moon moves 13 degrees every day. You've got a lot of fortune spinning around. You've got a lot of spirit spinning around. And these mechanisms wind and wind and wind. And I think that it's very easy when you're the sort of person who has a fixed kind of life, which a lot of people do, or it's just sort of kind of going through the motions of things. You get up, you go to work every day, you do this, you do that, you do this, it's happening, blah, blah, blah. You're living your life in the proscribed way that you thought you should be, or that has become familiar to you, and you are living in that process. Years can go by without your awareness of time. You become not really sensible to change. You know, you might be going through Christmases and patterns and birthdays and some rhythmic changes, but you're not aware that there are other forces also moving in the temporal process that are beginning to engage larger processes. So whatever you're holding on to now will eventually go away. It will become something else. It'll be transmuted, or you'll have to, build something else, or it'll just become something new. Subtly, over time, until you realize that it's no longer what you thought it was. Or they happen suddenly, through the shock forces of the cosmos. But in the zodiac, we are witnessing these shifts of time like a clock. The second hand moves around and it triggers the minute hand to move 1 degree, and then the minute hand moves a certain amount of degrees and it triggers the hour hand to move 1 degree. And if you would imagine that beyond that, as the hour hand moves through the positions, it triggers the day clock to move another degree. The moon moves a new degree. The sun moves a new degree. Mercury moves a new degree. Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all moving at slower and slower rates through time, but eventually going through their cycles. So that we as humans begin to experience new energy in our lives and things shift in the process. And as they shift slowly or rapidly, our consciousness shifts, and the old part of us that wants to hold on to those old patterns, that doesn't want to move into a new energetic space, that doesn't want to go on with some uncertainty in life, wants the familiarity, even though there's discomfort in it, wants the familiarity. That aspect feels pain. That part of us feels the pain of attachment and the loss of it. The loss of the things that we are attached to. We can't hold on to them anymore, and they're gone. And then they have to be released in memory, and they have to be released in emotional strength and resonance. And then we have to release the parts of us that were constructed around the having of those things. Processes of logic and habits and the very Virgo-y granularity of the logistical process of living. Those aspects that are in us that do that life, they have to change as well. That's a long-term process as we become different people in it. All of that involves pain along the way. Pain of minute change, because we're holding on to aspects of the past. It sucks. It hurts. It's painful. And when it happens quickly, that pain is like stubbing a toe. As it happens slowly, it's like a different kind of chronic dull ache. And it's difficult to gain awareness of it. Sometimes it's even better to have all this stuff happen quickly, because that pain becomes so sharp in our consciousness. It's so prominent. The stubbing of the toe happens. And now the pain is exploded in our minds. We've exploded with pain. And all we can do is think about it. And this process may go on for months, weeks, months. Being in that heightened state of pain, it depends on what you have lost. I bet you have gone through a state of loss so severe that you feel like you stubbed your toe for the last 3 months. You go through that level of magnificent pain. Unreasonable pain. And it's so intense, so prominent in your consciousness that you start to become identified with it. You're living with this state of pain. It's so severe and so at the forefront of your experience that you identify with it exclusively. It is like when you stub your toe. And that is all that you can think about in that moment is, oh my God, this sucks. It hurts. It's bad. And you're stuck there. Your mind is stuck. The first 10 seconds after you stub your toe, your mind is stuck in the pain. And the more directly and intensely you can feel that, the faster you can get to the point where your mind can release it. And take a step back and say, you take that first breath after you stub your toe and recenter yourself and get grounded again. And a little bit of that resonance of the pain, the sharpness in your mind diminishes back away. And you identify less with that pain. You are able to pull away from it. You're able to say, that is not me. This pain, oh yeah, this pain is not me. It's not who I am. I don't only just feel this pain. I am also a human being who does other things. I have other emotions, and I can feel joy, gladness, and gratitude, anticipation and excitement, and other things. There are other aspects to me that I can feel. Then we have to start releasing. As we move forward into aspects of change, we have to begin releasing that pain. There are steps that we can take to get us there a little bit faster. One of these is movement. It's very simple, but it's very overlooked. Because what movement does is literally rewire old patterns, so long as we are moving in new ways. So we introduce something to yourself that is joyful, that you can practice, that helps you move. If that's walking, and you didn't walk before, or you walked before, but walk in a new place. Walk in a different direction. Wear different shoes. Do something new. Change the way that you are moving, because that's the key. The body is holding on to this information inside of itself, this mapped out information. I have stress mapped out on my shoulders and on my back. I have certain pain mapped out in my throat. It becomes tightened. I have certain tensions in my jaw. Or tension in my hand. There's a certain pattern of pain from the way that I have been experiencing my emotional severity over the past couple of months. So what I have to do, and what you can do when you are in these situations, is change your pattern of movement. I'm doing yoga, I'm doing Pilates, I'm doing all these different things. I'm doing kettlebells, I am running. I am dancing around in my living room. And trying to feel a shift in my somatic energy in my body. You can get literal somatic work done. Go get a somatic massage. Get someone to work on your body. That's a great and profound release if you can do that. Get in a hot tub. Do something that changes the state of your body so that you can feel a new energy moving through it, and it can remap experience. You want to remap goodness onto your body again. You want to release the stress, get flexible, move, burn energy, and release the tensions and the pains that are holding on, literally holding on in your musculature and your nervous system. That attachment is there, and it has to be let go. You hear Dr. Joe Dispenza talk about releasing the body becoming no body, releasing the mind becoming no mind, and all these sorts of things, so that you let go of the attachments to this space, to the pain and the trauma, to the past, to who you are, where you're at, to anything that is occurring around you, so that you can get into a space of possibility in your mind, because you're no longer attached to what is, what was, what's supposed to be, all of those things. Now you come into a space of what is possible in the infinitude of my non-existence. That process of embodiment, of getting yourself grounded and changing the state of your body, getting in touch with your body, releasing the pain through movement, all of that sort of stuff that's the process of embodiment. It's the beginning of the process of embodiment, to bring consciousness into the body, to bring consciousness from up here, into this realm of anxiety and grasping. This is your ground chakra energy, which is just this exalted awareness of things, but we activate this too much, right? Gotta get down in here too, because this without grounding is anxiety. This upper level activation of awareness of conscious energy is anxiety unless it is attached to that embodiment in the root. And sacral chakras and all that sort of stuff. And then just in your physical body. And the energy running through your physical body, and its feeling of being grounded, literally, to the earth. It's a process, literally, of feeling yourself supported by the ground. And that, when you accomplish that grounding, brings your consciousness into the present moment, where you can now derive clarity necessary to begin propelling yourself forward into the next change. Because now that the force majeure has occurred and the change is beginning, the clock has moved on to a new time frame. We're entering the new space, and we may or may not want to, but it's happening. So in the process of it happening, now comes this sort of clarity. Now comes the sort of clarity. That was the King of Swords, which is this using the intellectual process to examine what is happening inside of us, so that we can envision and plan the future. You can't make a future happen if you don't know what it is. You have to pick a destination. At least in this process. Yes, maybe you can completely embody the self and act through your own excitement at every moment. and have that future manifest in that way, as long as you have a clarity of what that excitement is and what it is that you want to be doing, and can place your awareness there and live embodied in that space, which is a challenge. It's an active that's a titanic act of faith that I don't know many people are really capable of doing. I mean, you think about it, we have these mythical movies about people who are able to do this, like Forrest Gump. Can you live this Forrest Gump style life where you are just trusting in every moment? Or Being There, if you've ever seen Being There. He's just trusting in every moment because he doesn't know any better. Being There is about this gardener named Chansey who's played by Peter Sellers. If you've never seen this movie, okay. He's kind of not... He doesn't have a lot going on up here, this man. He's very sweet. He's very British. He's living a very humble life. He really only understands gardening. That's it. And he is working for this, this man, or this lord, I think, or something like that, you know. And he's maintaining the estate, and he's let go. And he doesn't really know what to do, so he just sort of does whatever he's going to do. Whatever his mind is like, okay, well, we're going to go do this now, I guess. Just looking around and seeing what is happening, and I'm going to respond in this way with the only things that I know, which is gardening. And he does that. And he does that from this authentic space of who he is, not expecting anything, simply acts in the way that he feels is appropriate to the moment. And he says, he'll just say, people will ask him questions, and he'll say something about gardening, and they'll take that to be some profound wisdom, and they'll gravitate towards him, and he becomes this mythic figure in the movie because of this. But all he's doing is just saying whatever he knows, and doing whatever he knows to do in the moment. He's not thinking beyond that. He's not trying to become somebody or be anybody. He's just in the act of faith of being the self authentically. Because he didn't even know better in this movie. Doesn't know better than to do that. We know better. We know that life has to be planned out a little bit. We have to have a vision of the future. We have to get ourselves there. We have to manifest ourselves into it. We have to get into all these processes of clearing our minds and getting, releasing our attachments, getting into the quantum field and envisioning these quantum leaps and jumps, or using this manifestation technique, or whatever it is, blah, 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 blah. Knowing our transits, doing our little tarot spreads. We think we have to... all of this is to mitigate the crisis of anxiety that's constantly going on in our minds, because we're so overwhelmed with all these possibilities that we can't get back down to the authentic self very easily and feel the expression of who we are, and allow the expression of who we are to happen in every moment authentically. That's too terrifying for a lot of us, so we have to go through other routes. If you can do that and live from perfect faith in your authenticity every day. No, you don't have to plan it out. You just have to be. And just go do that and hope that it all works out, and it probably will. I have a lot of faith that if I were able to do that, great things would happen. But I don't know that I'm really functionally capable of getting to that place. I think I'm just another one of those anxious people who has to sit with the whole process to essentially clear my mind and imagine a future that I can move towards authentically and with excitement, and kind of trick my brain into getting into the same space that Chauncey, the gardener, lives in on a daily basis. That same Forrest Gump kind of space where he's just... Forrest Gump is the other character, the one you're probably more familiar with, which is the Tom Hanks movie where Forrest Gump just does whatever comes to Forrest Gump, whatever ridiculous thing. He ends up running across the country because he just gets into the state where I'm going to run, and he just starts running, and he starts running across the country, and he doesn't have a plan, and he doesn't know where he's going, and it becomes this whole sensational news story. And then whatever, he meets the president, and whatever these crazy things that happen in his life. It's unprecedented circumstance that happens to Forrest Gump. He ends up living this extraordinary life, even though he's kind of just not the brightest bulb. But he's living authentically. We have to trick ourselves to get to the same space because of all the noise. So we have to do this work. We have to do this work of gaining a mastery of our own internal thought processes that are ping-ponging around inside of our little skulls and using up all our mental energy, all that chemical energy that we're consuming in order to keep our brains operating. We're using all of that to figure out our anxious states. You know what I mean? Like we're having to get ourselves clear. And that's that process of mastery represented by the King of Swords. He is that mental process, mastering it in himself, understanding what is happening inside of his own mind, and being able to exact, finally when he comes to clarity, exact his will through the dynamism of the Suit of Swords, through his own dynamism, through his own action. He takes action upon the world, but it is a deliberate one, where it is a thought-out, deliberate action. And so that is the energy that we have to come into. There is a masculine energy to it. It's masculine. Okay, not in the I have a penis kind of way masculine. It's in the energetic masculine. Okay, so you can be feminine. You can be feminine as you want to be. But this energy that you have to adopt in the process of dealing with the force majeure, the internal forces of change, is a masculine one, and is a masculine mastery of thought. So we can get clear on who we want to be and move towards, and what the future that we want to see. And as we get into our embodiment and are able to gain control over all of those attachments and excitements, anxieties and whatever that's going on inside of our heads, we gain control over that, we pacify it, we quiet it through our embodiment into the self, and then we are able to project outward a vision of that future so that we can see it and have it come forward. And hopefully in that process, bringing positive emotions to that manifestation. And I say this really specifically because I realized that I was not doing this. When you have this image in your mind of what you want to be seeing in your life, and this is your manifestation that you want to be moving towards, you want to have this vision be very clear in your head, first of all. And then you're going to move it forward in your vision so that it's like you are having it manifest in front of you in a certain sense. I'll get more into that probably in a different video. But a lot of people talk about this. Dispenza talks about this as well. I've had my own experiences with this as well. It's very important, the process of manifestation, the very visual process of manifestation. It doesn't have to be visual, but it is a process of bringing it forward into consciousness, into an overlay over reality. Okay, let's move on from that. That's not what I wanted to talk about. What I want to talk about is getting your emotions aligned with that vision, with that manifestation, so that when you're experiencing it in your vision, in your meditations, in your process of having this ideal future come to be, that you're putting excitement into it, that you want to be there, that it looks fun and enticing and exciting and gives you this feeling inside of you of satisfaction, of contentment, being rooted in the home, in the space of comfort, even if that's traveling necessarily. I just mean that you're embodied in a contented space, and you feel that in your present body. You feel the excitement of the future in your present body. And the problem that we can run into is that sometimes we have these things that we want and desire in our future, but we have a sense of shame around wanting them, or we have this negative expectation that it won't manifest because, nothing ever works out for us, or whatever it is. There are these shadows of the self that have to be addressed. You have to witness them when you're in the process of attempting to create these materializations in your mind, this manifestation state, attempting to get to the new state, right, of change. You have to get clear, you have to put that forward, and you have to have positive emotions. And in order to have that clarity in emotional state, you have to do the shadow work of examining the negative emotions that are present as you do this work. Examine those negative emotions and extract them from the process because they can't be there. You don't want them there. I don't think. I will say this, and if you're brave enough, you can try this. But what if it is only the intensity of the emotion that you need to feel? I know that the internet gurus and people on YouTube try to present one cohesive theory, body of manifestation of work, and this is all it should work. But I'm drawing forth hypotheticals here because I'm kind of curious. If it's necessary to feel excitement and joy and gratitude in these emotions, or can you feel any intense emotion that allows you to map these things onto the future? Because when you're negatively manifesting, you are feeling intense negative emotion, right? Attachments, and you're creating these manifestations of negative emotion, of the negative version of the future that you're seeing in your anxiety. That's coming to fruition because you're holding on to the intensity of that anxiety and envisioning that anxiety coming to fruition in your life. So what if you could envision a future, and even though you were a little bit shameful of that future, and even though you were a little bit, say, sad in the possibilities that it might not come to fruition into its entirety, what if you could still feel that projected forward and still have that reality come forward? Because that's the reality that you're feeling intensely. It's gravitating towards the feeling. Actually, gravitation is the wrong way to put it. Law is not... I sort of wish that it wasn't called the law of attraction. Because it's not quite attraction. It isn't quite that, I don't think. But we'll get into all of that stuff later, some other episode. This one is plenty long. Alright, thanks for watching. Hit the like button hit the like button and subscribe and share it with friends, because I'm growing this channel and I need help. So help me out, internet. I love you, and the more you help me, the more I can do this and come back. Because if you're watching at this point, well, you got something out of it, I assume, right? If you got something out of this, hit the like button and subscribe, and do me a favor. I'm Lady Nora Madonna. Thanks for watching. Bye.